G'day virus deniers. Today we're going to have a look at stamp duty, and we'll go to our website here. Buy, you click buy, calculators.
Good morning, it's Heather from First
We've got stamp duty calculator, and there it is. Change it to Queensland. Property value 500,000 to live in for an established home and a first home buyer. Click there. Transfer duty on property $0. Transfer fee $1,300. So we're about $1,500 in stamp duty fees. Now I just discovered this recently. Let's move over to 520,000, and it jumps up to $4,200 and ends up being $5,848 in fees. So I'm just going to show between 500 and 600,000 the dramatic increase in the amount of stamp duty you pay. So just be careful if you're doing an online auction or something like that. Every time you bid another 20,000, so we're at 520. Let's have a look at 540, and we're up to $10,000 in fees already from having almost zero, $1,500 at 500,000. By the time you get to 540,000, you got $10,000 extra on top, and so it goes. 560, we got $12,000. 580, we got $13,000. Something between 560 and 580 is okay. You get right up to 600,000 there, and we've got $14,794 in fees. So just be aware of that if you're bidding on a property between 500 and 600,000 and you're a first home buyer and you want to buy an established home to live in. You can all of a sudden the costs can drive up through the roof. So, and there's no actual need for any of these charges at all nowadays, because if we go to ABC here, the RBA has begun quantitative easing. What is it and how does it work? We'll have a quick read through here. Quantitative easing, one of those economic terms, is too abstract, so it's difficult to know what it means. Well, I don't know about that. Essentially, it's all about manipulating interest rates. Yeah, well, you're not wrong. Historically, quantitative easing is considered unconventional policy. These days it is becoming more conventional because of a growing number of central banks have exhausted their traditional policy toolkits and they're being forced to improvise. The Reserve Bank of Australia is one of them. It has just reduced its cash rate target to 0.1%, which is the lowest in history, so it's running out of traditional ammunition, so-called ammunition. That's why it's dedicated to dramatically increase its purchases of Australian government bonds. A government bond is a debt security that guarantees regular interest payments, say every 6 months, from the government to whoever buys them, which continues for the life of the bond. What does the RBA want to achieve? It wants the whole structure of interest rates in Australia to be lower, to make it cheaper for governments, businesses and households to borrow and invest, and to keep the value of Australia's dollar down to support economic growth. It plans to do that by buying 100 billion of government bonds over the next 6 months. Specifically, it focuses on buying government bonds with maturities of around 5 to 10 years, but it may also buy bonds outside of that time range depending on market conditions. A maturity is simply the length of the bond's life. For example, if a Treasury issues a 5-year bond, that bond will expire in 5 years. Roughly 80 billion of the QE program will be spent purchasing Australian government bonds, and 20 billion will be spent purchasing state and territory government bonds. At completion of the 100 billion bond buying program, the RBA will hold around 15% of Australian government bonds on issue. How will it work in practice? The RBA will be buying bonds from the secondary market. What does that mean? Well, the Australian Office of Financial Management sells bonds on behalf of the federal government via the Treasury, and the bonds are sold to institutional investors, large foreign and local banks, with the promise of making regular interest payments to whoever buys them, along with the repayment of the principal at a set future date. Those institutional investors then create their own markets for those bonds, called secondary markets, by on-selling them to other investors such as pension funds and super funds, hedge funds, insurance companies, private banks and central banks, which want to hold interest-bearing assets in their portfolios, just like you may. When the RBA buys Australian government bonds, it buys them from the secondary market. Is this a form of money printing? According to Sean Callow, a senior currency strategist at Westpac, you can think of it like money printing. So if it's so easy and we can just print the money, why bother with all this stamp duty stuff? What's another 14,000 out of 100 billion? So why bother with this charade of $1,500 all the way up? These people with 600,000, they must be all of a sudden doing so much better that they can pay so much more tax on money they've already paid tax on, that's made up out of money printing. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. See you on the next one.